Welcome back to another video for Joe's Diecast Garage and other stuff. Boom! Today, Redline Day. And here we have a lovely 1969 Heavy Chevy in Spectra Flame Orange. Pretty good shape for a 50-year-old vehicle. Well played with, but the glass is in great shape. Even the wheels are in great shape for a 50-year-old played with car. So I'm kind of eager to get in there and make her look like brandy new. So first things first, get out the old center punch. And some of these posts on these red lines are really, they're smaller than most posts in diameter. So you want to make sure you get that center punch as close to the center, if not dead center, if you can. It's super important because even when you're drilling them out, just a hair or a fraction off could mean disaster. So I'm being a little extra careful with my positioning. And that looks pretty good. So we get our drill out, and you know the drill with the drill. I'm pretty sure you do. We're just getting that mushroomed material as flat as we can so these the bases will pop off just like this one does. And this base is in great shape. The interior is in great shape. The axles are not bent and twisted. I almost didn't want to take this apart, but I did. So the glass is in really great shape with the exception of some schmutz and some things on the front and back part of it. There's definitely some things going on in here in the interior. It's just very brown, so there's dust and dirt. That will end up going into a little tank of soapy water, and I just dunk that in the windshield, put the lid on it, and let it soak and move on. Next up is to get the motor out. Same process, just remove a little bit of that material, and then I use the center punch to give it a little kick. I don't want to drill the hole so where it falls out, because when I reinstall it, I don't want to use glue if I don't have to. And here's the hair-raising portion of drilling these posts out. These posts are just so tiny on these cars, but patience and a little determination and all should be well. So I drill the posts, and time for a tap. The tapping on these is, for me it is anyway, a harrowing experience, but after doing probably a dozen red lines now, I'm a little more confident. So we get our tap going, and once we get these posts tapped, I make sure my screws will seat correctly. And once we get these tested and make sure that they're flush and secure, and then I move on to more fun. Here it comes. So some people might think I'm crazy, but in that container is 100% CLR solution, calcium lime rust. Comes in a silver bottle, and I do not dilute it. I just pay extra special close attention for this particular piece because it's in good shape. 4 minutes maximum at full strength. And since I'm going to remove the tires anyway, I left them on. This way it didn't ruin the hubs inside. Once it's done, immediately getting it into some distilled water so it stops the reaction. And then we move on to polishing. I don't go crazy with the bases. I don't polish until they're super shiny and, like mirrors. I just want them to look super clean, or as clean as possible, which that does. And that's as good as it's not as good as I can get it, but that's where I want it. And the same with the motor. I just want it to be clean. And then I move on to removing the tires. And since they were in that CLR, I didn't bother using the red line tool for any assistance. I just pulled them off. They were in good shape. I'm going to keep them, see if I can maybe restore them myself. Here's our new wheels. And when I do this, I keep downward pressure on the axles, because when you do this and you start doing weird angles and putting pressure, very easy to flip one of those axles straight up and twist it and bend it. And these were in super shape, and I didn't want to be the first one to twist them and bend them. You can probably use a little like Vaseline maybe, if these give you trouble, but these went on pretty easy. And you can see the action is still there with our suspension. And here's the big dip for our paint stripper. I just glop it on. That brush has seen better days. But get it full of product, snap a lid on it, put that aside. And by the magic of 24 hours later, polishing the body up. So sometimes you get really lucky with these, and the zinc coating underneath doesn't suffer from the oxidation of 50 or 60 years, whatever your project age is. And this one, unfortunately, even though the paint was still there, it did oxidize a little bit. And I think maybe there may have been some issues with the casting right out of the gate. So I decided to try and get some 2000 grit sandpaper and wet sand it and see what I could really do to just keep the zinc coating the way it was. And the roof was okay, but this passenger side, I believe, the passenger side was just roached out. So plan B was to do the Createx Quicksilver and Gloss Black paint job, which surprisingly, if done correctly, you really can get close to the Spectraflame factory look. I could have zinc coated this, but again, when I do these, I'm not trying to turn them back into something that they are no longer anymore. They're not the same. It's just not the same anymore. We're just trying to restore. I just try and restore it, get it clean looking, something to appreciate. So the object of this is to get this gloss black on, which really isn't a super gloss black. It's a deep black. It's a rich black. And then over the top of that, you shoot this Quicksilver chrome. And you're not supposed to shoot it so it's full chrome or full silver. You just want to dust the gloss black so the black still shows through, and it gives this weird effect that when you paint the Spectraflame paint over it, that it really does. I mean, in the right light, it looks just like the Spectraflame, as long as these two steps are done correctly. Now, I went a little heavier with the silver over this black, and I still got a great result. In the right light, you'll see at the end the finished product does, in the right light, it does look Spectraflame-ish, more of a candy look maybe, but pleased with the results anyway. The car looks awesome. You'll see it at the end. And I decided to go with the Aqua Red Line Shop Spectraflame. Great products. Red Line Shop really did their homework on a lot of this stuff. So I've actually seen guys make their own version of Spectraflame. There's some videos out there where you can find how to do that. So basically, I take 5 or 6, I think, might have been 6 micro droppers full of the paint, and it's urethane based with a hardener. They sell their own hardener as well, and you'll see that coming up. So for when I mix it, if I put 6 droppers full of paint, I use half as many drops, not droppers full, just literal drops of the hardener. And pretty sure that this was maybe 6 or 7 eyedroppers of paint, full droppers of paint. So I used 3 or 4 drops of the hardener. I mean, it's a great product. When it dries, it's dry, and you'll see at the end of the video, after it's dry and I'm putting everything back together, I'm not using any gloves while I'm handling the car because it's almost impossible to put fingerprints in the paint. Sometimes with just regular enamel paint, you can put a fingerprint even if the piece has been dried for a couple of days. So the process for SpectraFlame is very light coats because it's urethane and tacky. So it's a light coat, a little bit of air, let it dry a little bit, then a little heavier coat. It's just a buildup of paint. And what you're going to see here in the paint portion of the video is not the representation of what the car turns out like. There's probably 6 or 7 coats of paint on the body, and it turns it almost into a green. It's really, really cool. But the process for this is a tack coat, let it dry a little bit, a tack coat, let it dry, then build them up and get them a little bit heavier, a little bit heavier. I don't know what happened to the video there, that last few seconds of the paint, but it looks like it's smoothed itself out now. So now I'm going back and taking the interior out of our soapy water. I ended up making a little tiny split on the dashboard of this. The dashboard actually folds over. The piece is actually flat, I guess. And then it folds the dash and it snaps together. And you'll see the little split. I actually turn it towards the camera. So I had to do a little repair job with some crazy glue. So 50 years the car was pretty much intact. I get my gooberish hands on it and I end up breaking a piece of plastic. So let that be a lesson. 50-year-old plastic, you got to be gentle with it. It's brittle. So now I move on to the windshield. And I already used the front portion of the, on the front portion I used 2000 grit sandpaper. And that's the rear portion of the window. Got some schmutz and a couple of scratches and whatever on it. So wet sanding, 2000 grit, very gentle. And I want to make it look like sea glass. If you've ever seen a piece of sea glass and you hold it up to the light, how it's that frosty look. That's what I'm shooting for when I do this. And I make sure I take my time. I've really tried to pay attention when I do this plastic work. Because you don't want to break it, because then you have to wait, you have to order a new one. And it just kind of spoils your mood. So I'm careful. I make sure I don't put too much pressure. You can see I got my pinkies and fingers up there. I'm holding it very gently. And I'm just looking for a sea glass look with the 2000 grit. And then once I have that look, I want to smooth it even more. I want that to be very, very smooth. So I use my 4000 grit fret eraser, which I used in a previous video. And that's that little eraser laying on the towel there. I'll put a link. I get that from StuMac, which is a luthier tool company when I do fret work on guitars. So it's 4000 grit. And very gently I'm just rubbing the plastic to smooth out any other scratches. And now it's on to Pledge Revive It time. Call it what you will. Tire shine, window shine, future shine. It's been confirmed in another video that I saw somebody do that the original product, Future Shine from Johnson Wax, was rebranded and is now called Pledge Revive It. And this is what I'm using here. You can get it in your local grocery store. So if you ever run out and you're in a jam, you should be able to find it. So my interior got a little dip, so she glosses up a little bit, and I'll put that in my little container with paper towel in it. And I don't know what was wrong with me, but I had a couple of dropsies with this windshield. I spared you the gory details because it didn't look pretty. I cut it out of the video. So I actually had to dip this 4 times because every time I went to pick it up and place it in the container, I ended up flipping it over, or it slipped out of the jaws of the tweezer. You can see the mess I made on the paper towel there. But I finally got it in, locked up, so it will dry without any dust, and I can move on. So here is the final assembly. Getting the motor in first, because like I said in the beginning of the video, I didn't want to use any glue. So I used the center punch to pop that out, and now I really have to put a little bit of pressure to snap it back in. And it was a little tedious. I wanted to make sure I got it in there without, doing any damage to the car, but I did. And you can see me turn it over and tap on it so it doesn't fall out. It's in there tight. And you can see what I mean by the color buildup from the paint portion. It's almost a green, and it could be the lighting because that's an LED shop light. So I'm not really sure, but it's a cool color, and when the light hits it the right way, it's definitely got that Spectra Flame look. I had a couple of dust boogers on the roof of the car that I hit with 2000 grit sandpaper. I wet sanded them down, and then I brought the body of the car over to the polishing wheel that I have on my drill press and polished it up. And that's straight Spectra Flame paint. There is no gloss coat or clear coat over that. And as I said, I'm handling it without any gloves. I'm not putting any fingerprints on it. It's hardened super great. And the shine is unbelievable just from straight urethane. And here we go for the final countdown. Get our 2 screws in. Make sure everything's fitting snugly. And we'll call this one done. I mean, this is probably, I think this is the 4th Heavy Chevy. I'm a General Motors and Chevy fan, so anytime I get my hands on one of these, I don't care if it's totally roached out. I just love them. It's my favorite Hot Wheels casting from that era. And I just love them. So I think this is the 4th one I've done, and the first one I've done in this aqua color. So the base is on, it's snug, and I move on to the last part, which gives me a fit after you've done all this work, and then you go and you want to just do some touch up and paint the grill and the taillights. It's a little unnerving, so that's where I go next. And I use the Createx Candy 2.0 blood red paint for the signal markers in the back. When you polish the metal and you use this is almost it's not pure transparent, but it's got transparent properties of this Candy 2.0 paint. Tends to look more like a marker because you're letting some of that metal show through. So it is acrylic, water-based, and I like to keep my brush a little damp when I paint this on. And because it's pretty much, it's almost ready to go into an airbrush right out of the bottle. You do reduce it a little bit, but it's pretty thin. So I try and get this on so it kind of it moves itself. You don't really have to fuss with it too much. I think I got a little heavy. Well, I definitely got a little heavy-handed with this first marker, so I had to take a paper towel and get some of that off. I noticed as I was doing the second taillight marker that it was pretty heavy on the first one. So I grabbed the corner of a paper towel and I just let it suck up like a sponge, and then I smoothed it out. But other than that, it went pretty smooth for the taillights. And then for the grill, I used the gloss black that I used for the paint job on the body because that's ready to shoot. It doesn't have to be thinned out, and it's not a heavy gloss. It's acrylic, and it has a decent sheen to it for an acrylic paint, but it's not a high gloss paint. So for the grill, I didn't want it to be shiny, and I didn't want it to be flat. So it's kind of a happy medium by using that gloss black paint. You'll see that coming up in a second. And because this is ready to go right out of the bottle, it has the same kind of properties. It's almost runny. So you don't have to force it around with a brush. You can kind of get it on and then just push it a little bit with your brush, and it goes wherever you tell it to go or force it to go. Force isn't the word because you're not forcing it at all. It's just easy to work with. And I switch up brushes because I didn't like that first one. And I use these little glass candle holder bowls. I think I pick them up at the dollar store because they're not porous. So once you put your product in there, whatever it is you're using, I've even used epoxy in there to mix it up, and then once the epoxy hardens, it just chips right out. So I just put whatever amount that I need to use or I feel I need to use, and when I'm all done, it's a simple rinse out. I get a little denatured alcohol on a cloth and just wipe them out. So the final touches going on the grill. And this is another Heavy Chevy notch in my belt. And looking for another one. So if anybody wants to donate one, be more than happy to make another video at some point. Or just make a video just for you. So I think we're going to call this one done. I think we're almost there. And I didn't manage to get any paint anywhere else. I got it just where it was supposed to go, so it was a complete success. And then we'll get this car shown off so you can see it. You can see that window looks fantastic. You can see the shine on it. So here's my poor man's rotisserie. And you can see how that color, the way the light hits it, sometimes it's a little bit of a greenish color. You can see the spectral flame that's kind of there. In person, it really does look, the camera doesn't do it justice. But like I said, I'm not trying to make them, these aren't for resale. We're not trying to make these, what they once were. We're just saving them and hoping to get another 50 years. Somebody else might enjoy them, or maybe somebody might want to redo them. That's it. She's a clean machine, and might be the best Heavy Chevy I've done to date. And can never have too many Heavy Chevys. I think show off the base. Like I said, I don't go crazy with the base. It's just got to be clean. Our suspension is great. She rolls fully. She's ready to race. Maybe we'll get this sent off to somebody that does those videos of Hot Wheels racing. Or maybe we'll gift this out to a subscriber somehow. Maybe I'll figure out some way to do that. So the Heavy Chevy's done. While I was out shopping this week, I noticed that the Holiday Edition Hot Wheels are out. And I picked up... It's coming. Wait for it, wait for it. I picked this up. It's called the Screamliner, and it just reminded me of some of the old 30s and 40s futuristic cars that were built back in that time. And I'm like, you know what? This might make a cool custom. So I busted out 94 cents, and there may be a custom video coming up shortly with that car. So keep watching for that. But back to the Heavy Chevy. One last look before we sign off. Appreciate you guys watching. And don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.